I believe that a new all-time high this time for Bitcoin is possible before the halving. There's several reasons for that. What you have to wonder when you're thinking about an asset with a finality of supply is what's going to move the demand lever of this asset. So what they're saying is if an ETF is approved, like the BlackRock ETF, if it is approved, then what that means is they are predicting a $25 billion demand in the first year. That works out to about $100 million a day. The current equilibrium price, so to keep the Bitcoin price completely stable, there's about $25 million a day worth of demand coming in right now to keep it stable. If the demand dips, then the price dips. If it goes up, then the price goes up, right? But the current equilibrium demand is $25 million. An ETF being approved and $25 billion of demand within the first year, that increases the daily demand from 25 million to 125 million. So then the question is, what needs to happen to the price of Bitcoin? Because you can't move the supply lever on Bitcoin. It's the only asset where you cannot move the supply lever. When an ETF is approved and the daily demand goes from $25 million a day to $125 million a day, what's the equilibrium price? If the price goes from 30 to 60 and it looks like it's about to go to 80, are you more likely to hold or sell your Bitcoin? You're more likely to hold if you're a rational investor. So therefore, the hodl rate goes up, but not assuming that, not assuming any FOMO kicking in as the price goes up. They are projecting that an equilibrium price to match the daily demand, if an ETF is approved, would be $140,000 per Bitcoin before the halving. If an ETF is approved after the halving, remember, the supply of Bitcoin on a daily basis is going to go down by 50%. So this is extremely bullish as fuck, and this is one reason why we can absolutely get a new all-time high before the halving in this cycle. I can literally talk to you from here and influence, millions of dollars of capital movement from YouTube. YouTube is the single most important platform when it comes to thinking and thoughts around investing that there is out there. That's why I don't focus on anything else. My guy, created a TikTok and an Instagram and this, that, and the other. I don't focus on it. I focus on YouTube because it's the single most important one. And I can do this from anywhere in the world, and you can also move capital from anywhere in the world. This is the real question I have. How much pain is it going to take for there to be a 0.1% capital flight from existing real estate? I'm not talking about 1%. Hear me correctly. I'm not talking about 1%. I'm talking about 0.1%. How long will that take? Right? That's the real question here. How long will it take for real estate investors to realize commercial property is done because so many people are now working remote, working from home? How long is it before a commercial, institutional capital allocator? I'm not talking about emotional capital allocators, right, which is more retail. I'm talking about ruthless, numbers-driven, focused on ROI. How long until they realize that we maybe need to pull out 0.1% out of our real estate allocation? Because the truth is that 0.1% coming out of that real estate allocation equals $1 million Bitcoin. And you might go, oh, that sounds crazy. Well, here's how the maths work. There are some very, very smart mathematicians that are employed at Bank of America, and I've been talking about the bull market multiple. Probably the first person that ever started talking about it, because I started talking about it the week after Bloomberg reported on Bank of America's findings, while everyone was saying, no, that's crazy, it's got to be 3-1. And now it's being proven to you every time there's a pump in the market. Just saw, sub $1 billion come in when there was the fake ETF tweet, pushed the market up by $57 billion. That's not a 3-1 multiple. So these guys basically concluded that for every dollar that goes into Bitcoin, the market cap moves by 118, and that's obviously flexible. It's not fixed. But what that means is that $180 billion going into Bitcoin out of the $330 trillion that there is. right? Out of the $330 trillion that there is, let's say 180 to 300 billion. That's it. And it's not a lot when you think about it, right? It sounds like a lot when I say 180, 300 billion. The whole market is $330 trillion. We're talking about fractions of a percent moving out and going into Bitcoin because it is property that I can move anywhere in the world at the flash of a flash of thought. Oh, okay, cool. There's need for property in Singapore. Let's go. Move the Bitcoin to Singapore. Oh, there's a need for property in London. Okay, move the property to London. How long before those capital allocators, the smart ones, the unemotional ones, the ruthless ones, the killers, the accountants, the nerds, the lawyers, figure out that just by putting a 0.1% allocation in Bitcoin, they can outperform any other fund that's out there that's investing in real estate? I don't think it takes that long, especially now that the asset is becoming normalized. That's the key point. The asset is becoming normalized. And that 0.1%, 180 to 300 billies going into Bitcoin over a short period of time is going to take Bitcoin's price to $1 million a coin. This, by the way, does not include retail buying. Doesn't include me and you buying it. It doesn't include inflow from newly printed money. I'm assuming that no more dollars are ever printed ever again. This is just existing real estate market cap. I'm assuming that there's no inflow from stocks. I'm assuming that there's no inflow from bonds. I'm assuming that there's no inflow from gold. I'm assuming that there's no development of foreign currency transfers on top of Bitcoin, which is a $7 trillion daily market. I'm assuming that the FASB accounting rule changes mean and everyone just ignores Bitcoin. All publicly traded companies just ignore Bitcoin. I'm also completely ignoring the effect of the halving that's coming up to halve the supply. I'm also completely ignoring the fact that the hodl rate, the number of people choosing to hold Bitcoin as the price goes up, continues to go up. I'm definitely not taking into account the ease of the onboarding coming in with the new spot Bitcoin ETF that will be coming in January, as Bloomberg Intelligence points out. All I'm saying is, what does it take for the most ruthless capital allocators in the world in real estate to turn around and say we should probably allocate 0.1% of our portfolio to Bitcoin? Not 1%, not 5%, definitely not 10%. 0.1%. And that capital influx takes the price of Bitcoin to $1 million. And then you know what happens? Everyone else takes notice. Then you go from 0.1 now. If I want a competitive advantage against that fund, I now need 0.2. So then you start building on that side. Then the stocks guy looks at you and he goes, wait a second. They've got a real estate fund and it's outperforming my equities portfolio. I better get some Bitcoin. Then the gold guy goes, hey, wait a second. I'm tired of being victimized by gold and its doom and gloom boomer attachment. I'm going to sell some of that gold and get into Bitcoin. Then the corporate CEOs get pressured because the board the board is like, wait a second, you haven't generated us any returns whatsoever. You better get your shit together and better start putting some money capital into Bitcoin to increase my share price. Then you got retail that finally jumps in, sees the price go up to a few $100,000. Is like, oh shit, I got to get in on this, and gets in on it. The real question is when does that ruthless killer, capital allocator, nerd, lawyer, accountant, when does the switch flip for them that they need a 0.1% allocation and it outperforms everyone else that they're competing with, and they can move the property, and they're no longer subject to local government BS, and they can be in charge and control of their wealth? When do they realize? Because you might be attached to your real estate, and you might be attached to your investments. They're not. They're attached to returns because their income is completely dependent on the returns that they can generate for their clients. So the question isn't, when does 10% this, 10% that? My question is this: when does 0.1% decide that it's time to get into Bitcoin. That's all it is, 0.1%. And again, I'm not including any other dollars that will ever be printed. Talking about 0.1% of existing real estate market cap. And the difference is that you have got until then to realize. You don't think that they've already woken up to this? You don't think that they pay attention to BlackRock? You don't think that they pay attention to Fidelity? You don't think they pay attention to the SEC? You and I might be sitting here listening to morons on the internet, but they're not. They're listening to tax code. They're listening to BlackRock. They're listening to Fidelity. They're listening to all their advisors, and they're being told Bitcoin is outperforming all other investments, and you probably need an allocation to this. And they're preparing. Are you prepared? Are you prepared while they're preparing? Remember, as they only need 0.1% of a move to completely and utterly outprice you. Your dreams of ever owning one Bitcoin will go out the window if they move 0.1%. Not 1%, not 5%, not 10%, 0.1%. But despite all of this, there are still only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.